Hello and welcome to another video, guys. Now today we're going to be diving into the history of one of the most famous and interesting waves on the entire planet. The wave that you might know as hollow trees, HTs, Lance's Right, has a super interesting history. So today we're going to take a look at how it was discovered and how it became the well-known wave we all know and love today. So Lance Knight, a surfer from Yamba, Australia, used to work on cargo ships running between Yamba and the island of Lord Howe. Now, after losing his job and his girlfriend in quick succession, Lance was pretty keen to get out of Australia and go and hunt some waves. So with that in mind, he flew to Singapore in search of just that. So while Lance was originally headed to Nias, he was inspired by Peter Troy's tale of discovering Nias to go and find a Nias of his own. So after acquiring some detailed maritime maps and studying the island south of Nias, known as the Mentawai, he saw there was a pretty good chance of a world-class surf potential in those islands. So in 1991, Lance landed in Padang among the crazy Padang Tourism Week, where he was hailed as the sole tourist in the whole town. He has a crazy account of where he was greeted by people and had to listen to speeches and go through all of these parties. And he befriended some of the locals there. And most notably, he befriended an Iranian doctor whilst on a night out in Padang. And while this seems incredibly unlikely, he hitched a lift on a medical flight over to Sapora Island from Padang. He paid $50 for the flight and only carried with him a surfboard, a bag of rice and a bottle of water. So after flying out to the islands off Sumatra, was left to his own devices in the middle of Sapora Island. He landed on the non-surfing side of the island before walking around the beach and befriending a local who owned a canoe. He convinced the guy to take him around the island in the canoe in search of waves. So originally, after studying the maps, Lance was actually headed to a bay close to where HT's is, but after they were motoring around the island, a storm came in and they had to take shelter in the bay at Katiet. So while sheltering in the bay, what Lance saw before him was the wave we all know today, you know, that freight training double up right-hander. I can only imagine the feeling of excitement that he had at this time, knowing that no one else was there. So he went to shore from there and watched the wave for a while, and while it took him a while to pluck up the courage to actually start taking off and getting barreled on some of these waves, he eventually did and adopted a routine of surfing for 4 or 5 hours every single morning during the morning offshores, whilst a crowd of eagerly anticipating locals watched on from the jungle. So then after riding those first few waves, he named it Lance's Right. While camping in the jungle, he befriended another local by the name of Pak Hosen. Now Pak Hosen is a legendary figure who took Lance in, gave him somewhere to stay, fed him, and this is where Lance lived when he first discovered the waves. Now on one day when it went onshore at Lance's Right, Pak led him to the other side of the bay to a left, which was essentially just a mirrored version of the same wave, only it was offshore. So then after surfing the left as well, he gave it the same name of Lance's Left. Then one day a Western salvage boat turned up. Now the legendary Indies trader was carrying a salvage crew who were part working, part hunting waves, and they pulled up and anchored up in the channel outside HT's. Now Lance, while he was slightly disappointed, he was pretty keen to have somebody to surf with, so he paddled out to the boat, surfed with the crew on the boat, and they went back to the Indies trader and shared beers and stories. And so while Lance and the Indies trader captain Martin Daly swore to keep the wave a secret, word did eventually get out, and after a boat trip full of American pros descended upon the Mentawais, word did eventually spread to the wider surfing world. The American pros renamed the wave, not knowing it was called Lance's Right, but called it Hollow Trees. And in early footage of the place, you can see a huge tree on the reef, which is why it got renamed. Once word got out, boat trips and camps were set up around the area, and the Ments became what we know it today. So Lance actually went back to Padang with the guys on the Indies trader and didn't actually return to the wave for another 10 years. So what's Lance's Right like today? Now today, Lance's is super crowded. You've got various different camps on the land in Katiet. You've got HT's Resort, Kingfisher Resort, a number of other accommodations on the sand there. You've got boat trips that run all season long, so on the best days Lance's has like 50 to 60 guys out. So the wave still remains the same, freight training, shallow, perfectly blue right-hander. While it's definitely crowded and not the sort of remote, empty tropical paradise it was when Lance first discovered it back in '91, it's one of those waves that everyone should surf at least once in their life, I guess. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this short story of how Lance's Right was discovered. So imagine flying to a corner of the world you weren't sure had waves or not, and then getting a lift on a medical flight and then living like Lance did. It's incredible and really inspiring story. I love going and researching these kind of surfing stories. It's what inspires me the most out of everything in surfing. So hope you've enjoyed this breakdown. Please like and subscribe if you did. And please let me know of your experience of surfing HTs. I mean, personally, I found it really frustrating, crowded and shallow, but yeah, let me know what you thought. For now, it's goodbye from me, and I'll see you in the next episode.